to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Well, hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. I hope everybody is doing wonderful. I hope everybody had a fantastic Christmas, and I hope you're looking forward to the new year here. And I hope everybody has a wonderful new year. Like always, I'm joined by Ashley, sitting over there. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Matt, and hope you are fantastic out there. Thanks for joining us a day early. You probably have really exciting New Year's Eve plans, so I'm glad you've made the time to sit and talk with us tonight about the drawings that we made over the last season.
That's right. Tonight's episode is the season finale of Getting Sketchy 15, or season 15. And what we do here on the season finale show, it's the 11th show in the season, and we go through all of the artworks that we've created this season. We do a quick critique of those artworks, those sketches and paintings, and then we pick out which ones we like the best. And we do so for each one of our drawings and paintings. And if you drew alongside of us this season, then you can do the same thing. Hopefully you created all 10 drawings and paintings. I'm sure there's somebody out here that did that. So that's what we're going to be doing this evening. But like always, I'll remind you, if you are watching the live version of this, there's a chat box. You can post comments and questions. If you do have a comment or question that's directed specifically at Ashley or I, we ask that you put that. We use the super chat function for that. That will get your comment or question predominantly displayed there in the chat box. And it costs a little bit of money, but that goes to help out the program and the website. So, and the website I'm talking about is thevirtualinstructor.com. If you love drawing and painting, which you probably do since you're watching the show, you need to go over to thevirtualinstructor.com and check out what all we have over there. There's thousands and thousands of art instruction videos on pretty much any subject matter or media that you're looking for. To check out the program that we offer over there, you can scan the QR code on your screen, or you can look for the link in the description video. And also in the description below this video, there's a link to check out 3 free course videos and ebooks too, so you can get a little preview before you start your free trial. We also offer a free trial over there as well. So we do courses, we do classes, we have weekly live lessons, which we'll do after this, and we also do critiques as part of the Members Minute each week. And there's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers too. So if you're a teacher and you need some resources and material, all of it is prepared for you already. All you have to do is literally come into your classroom, turn on your computer, connect it to your projector, and show the videos and the PowerPoints, and give out the handouts, and then make sure the materials are out. So it's pretty easy. All right. I hope everybody's doing fantastic this evening.
It looks like Lisa has done all 10 drawings. Shout out to Lisa Henning, who has completed all 10 drawings along with us. And she says she's got them all right here.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Laid out like a deck of cards, and it's going to go through a self-critique along with us.
That's absolutely fantastic. So thanks for sharing that with us, Lisa. That really makes what we're doing here a lot more worthwhile. So thank you. And hello to everyone around the world. I see Norway, New York, Minnesota, Texas. And we're thankful that you're joining us here on a day earlier, because tomorrow is New Year's Eve. So it's not really the optimal time to do a live broadcast. So we're doing it tonight. And then we'll be, since this is the last episode of season 15, we'll start with season 16 in a few weeks or maybe a month or so. We run these Getting Sketchy episodes in seasons, and then we take a little bit of break because, guys, it is mentally and physically taxing to do this each and every week. It probably doesn't look that way, but it is. So we will take a short break, and then we will come back in a few weeks. So are you guys ready to get into it? Ashley, are you ready to get into it?
I'm ready. I'm ready to get into it. Talk about what went well, maybe what we do different in each of our drawings.
Yeah. And, this is different from the other episodes, obviously, because we're not creating a drawing here. And a lot of people want to just bypass the critique element of creating art. But critique is extremely important in improving your artworks. And you can improve your own artworks by looking at the artworks of others. That's why in virtually every college program, projects, pieces of art, are critiqued. And they're critiqued in front of the entire class, and everybody's artwork is critiqued. And it's not just to the benefit of the artist that created it, but it's to the benefit of everyone in attendance. So even though we're going to be looking at the drawings we created, and we're going to be critiquing them, you're still going to be able to pick up little tidbits here and there that you can carry over and use in your own artworks. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over, and we'll get into this critique.
Excellent.
All right, a little different tonight because I don't need to turn on the overhead lights tonight.
That's right.
I can keep that down.
You can turn it on by muscle memory.
Yeah.
Switched over and turned on the glowing lights.
Turn on all the lights. So this is Ashley's first drawing of the season.
That's right. I kicked it off with a sharpener in pencil.
Yeah, and we're just going to go in order and talk about each one of these individually. Ashley, you want to talk about this piece here?
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, this one was in graphite, and I like to wade into the season comfortably. And so I picked an object that I was very familiar with and have drawn before, or at least drawn something, a similar sharpener to it. And I picked a medium that is pretty familiar to all of us, and we all feel most comfortable following along with the first drawing of the season. And pencils are, they're so common, and it's you don't have to have like specialty materials because everybody has pencils. So I thought it would be a good first drawing of the season to begin with. The key to this drawing, I feel like, was the edges that are parallel to each other, getting the perspective right on those. So if you look at the front of the sharpener, the leading edges at the top and bottom over the opening, it was really important that those were parallel and that they relate to the back edge according to the rules of linear perspective. So those are all parallel edges, and they actually taper together just a little bit as we move back into space. So I would say the number one key to making this drawing look acceptable, look good, is that the edges that are parallel appear to be parallel according to perspective. And then the second key, I think, was ordering our values from light, medium, and dark on it's the left side was light, the top was medium, and then the front was dark, and getting enough of a value contrast between those three sides. This essentially is a box. It's a complicated box. It's got little ridges, little cutouts, and gaps where the blade is, and a hole where the pencil goes. But it's essentially a box, and so we're going to be able to see three sides of it. We want those three sides to appear to occupy a different place in space according to the light. And so I would say that no matter how you shaded yours, whether your marks are vertical, horizontal, or cross hatching, that's important, but it's less important than ordering those values. So those were my thoughts on this piece. I like how it came out. I can't remember if I used the electric eraser around the pencil opening or if I just try to preserve those little white areas. But it's worth noting that there's almost no white in this drawing. Just the very shiniest areas are white up at the little Phillips head screw and around that rim. And so I didn't think about it when I was thinking about this piece a little bit earlier and what I wanted to say about it. But it is worth noting that there's very little white left in the drawing, and that's what makes it feel, complete as we get in 45 minutes. So this was a lot of fun. And I would also note that it's drawn larger than life. So it's a very tiny object, and the details were so small that I felt like drawing it just a little bit bigger than it is in real life would make it easier to capture those few details.
Yeah, and I really love this drawing. And I want to talk about a few things that you've done here to make this drawing exceptionally good. But Charles asked first, if you wanted to assure that the edges appeared parallel, can you use the same trick as parallel lines drawn to a horizon in a landscape? And that's what Ashley was referring to earlier when I drew these lines on here. If we continued these lines back into space, they would line up with a vanishing point off the picture plane up here.
It's really far away, but there is a dot. There's a point out there. It's just outside of the picture plane, different than sometimes in a landscape.
And there's another one over here. So this is actually an example of 2-point perspective. So that last line I drew is terrible, but these lines are going to a vanishing point off the edge of the picture plane. This one as well. And with 2-point perspective, it's all about the corner. You start with you have to consider the corner of the object there. So there's the corner. And then we've got lines going back to 2 vanishing points on either side. So yeah, that's one of the things that's working for this piece. But the thing that I want to point out is the directional stroking that is important for creating the illusion of form here. And it's something that a lot of people overlook when they're adding media to the surface. But we do need to think about the cross contour lines. And they're not really lines, but you can kind of imagine them. If you were to run your finger over the surface of the object, it would change direction according to whatever plane you're on. Mm-hmm. So that's a good example there where you can understand cross contour lines. But people really kind of sometimes miss the point of understanding cross contour lines, and it helps us with shading or adding the medium to the surface. So in Ashley's case, he was adding graphite to the surface. So the directional strokes on this plane are following the flow of that plane. The directional strokes on this plane are following the same direction on that plane, and the same thing's true here. And it might not seem a big deal, but if you were to just take your graphite and shade it like this, it would actually affect the illusion of the form that's there. So we really need to think about the directional strokes that we use when we're applying medium to the surface. And this is true of not just graphite, but any medium that you apply. Colored pencils, or if you're painting, your brush strokes can flow in that direction. So it's very important to see that, note that, and use that in your own artworks. Another good place to see this directional stroking is in the opening of the pencil sharpener.
Curves in there.
Yeah, you can see the curves that go around, and that helps reveal the hollowness of that going in, and also some of the texture as well as also creating the illusion of form.
In the blade of the sharpener, there is the very edge of the blade that actually does the cutting. That's an angled plane, and there are, it would be easy to go the long direction there, but I did use diagonals that follow the direction of that angle. So the cross contour shading is really evident there, even though it's such a narrow plane.
All right.
Incidentally, this one is 3-point perspective. The vertical edges are leaning in towards the ground as well.
Right. So, really, everything we see is 3-point perspective.
True.
But
true.
It's simple. It's a little bit more simple to just do 2-point perspective and think about that. But you're right. All right, let's move on.
Let's go to number 2.
The second piece, because we're going to have to go quickly because we always tend to go over on these shows.
We go slow in the first one, speed up.
Speed up.
Let's try to even it out a little bit.
All right. The second piece of the season was mine, and I wanted to start with something that I'm comfortable with, and that is pastels. And I think birds are a wonderful subject for really any medium.
Soft.
When you're learning a medium, you kind of want to pick a subject that you're familiar with and is not overly complex to draw or paint. So I like to have students start with a sphere, because a sphere is a pretty simple object. So when you're learning a new medium, you can pick a simple form like a sphere, or something that's simple like a bird. And I think birds are made up of simple shapes. So I started with a subject that I'm very familiar with, and also a medium that I'm very familiar with. This is pastel on pastel matte paper. And I wanted to create kind of a looser, more impressionistic image. So when I went through this process, I was a little bit tighter in the beginning, and then added some of the looser marks towards the end, like that mark right there. And of course, I did the background at the end, and also allowed some of the edges to be a little looser and lighter, or a little bit looser and less defined in this piece to make it feel a little bit more painterly, a little bit more impressionistic. What I like about this piece is the diagonal that happens there with the tree branch, and I like the color combination of blue and orange. These colors are complementary colors on the color wheel. So if we have a color wheel, red, yellow, and blue, and then of course we've got green here, and orange, and purple. And we can see that blue and orange are directly across from each other on the color wheel. That makes them complementary colors. Complementary colors are a form of a color scheme. It's a way of simplifying your color palette, but complementary colors provide high contrast and pop especially when they're right next to each other. So if you understand complementary colors and you start looking around at the world around you, you start noticing how many times complementary colors are used in logos and sports teams and other things like that. So I like the color contrast of the blue and the orange. And I know that the background's green and there's some other colors in here as well. But really, blue and orange are my favorite color combination, as evidenced by the fact that the logo for the virtual instructor is blue and orange. Some of the things that I like about this are the loose applications of the material, using the side of the pastel to make some stronger, blockier marks.
I love that.
And kind of the feeling of movement associated with the marks. There's kind of a circular kind of movement that's happening there just by the mark making. The things that I would change about this piece are really all happening down here. And that's with the talons, the feet, or whatever you want to call them. It's kind of how the feet were positioned in the reference, but sometimes you can have information in a reference that when you put in a drawing or painting, it just doesn't really replicate the way you think it should. And this talon right here especially, it looks like it's kind of hanging off the side of the branch. I would have liked to spend more time on that and kind of tighten that up a little bit. Plus, it feels like looking at this, after some time has passed, feels like there needs to be a little bit more shadow down here, especially when we look at this area right here that is feels a little bit more natural. And the white down here feels a little bit too strong, in my opinion. All right, I think that's all I got to say about that one. Ashley?
Well, yeah, I like how you used the lightest green at the top of the head where there's a lot of darkness in the beak and then around the eye. And then the darker greens that you've used are closer to those whiter areas. So they're those areas you may feel like they're a little bit too white. There should have been some more shadow passages in there. You have a lot of light, dark, or value contrast in the bottom half, and then complementary color contrast in the top half. And so, one top or bottom, I guess that either the top or the bottom doesn't really dominate in terms of its contrast. It feels balanced in that way. So, and I do really love those blocky shapes that you use in the background and in the branch. It makes the smaller marks in the bird feel softer, and those soft edges or blurry edges really contribute, I think, to the soft feel of the bird itself. So I really like those aspects. And we did have a super chat, by the way.
I see that. Yeah. Thank you, Keith, for the
Happy
super
New
chat.
Year's super chat.
And Keith says, Happy New Year. Do you ever use pan pastels? And Keith, I would do the cheer for you, but I don't have it available when I have this camera scene up. So
we'll have to do it ourselves.
Well, yeah. All right. I think that's kind of how it sounds. So, but thank you, Keith. We really appreciate it. I do use pan pastels very rarely. Pan pastels, there's some things that I don't like about pan pastels. I'll be very transparent. I don't like the applicators. I feel like they dry rot very quickly and fall apart. I think that pan pastels are extremely expensive.
For the amount of pastel you actually get.
You do get a lot of pastel.
They do last a long time.
But it is expensive for what it is. Mm-hmm. And everything that a pan pastel application can do, traditional stick pastels can do too. So I do use them sometimes, but not very often. Really, the only time I use pan pastels is when I want a soft background with very soft transitions between different colors and values. Most of the time, I just can accomplish that with stick pastels, the regular pastels. But I'll use them. I have a lot of pan pastel actually. I just don't really use it that frequently because of the reasons why I mentioned. The applicators I don't think are very high quality, and I can accomplish everything that I can with a pan pastel with a stick pastel without having to worry about contaminating the applicator by putting it into another pan pastel pan. So that's kind of my opinion on that. I think pan pastels are very popular. I think people love them, and if you enjoy them, then you should stick with it and keep using them. I think that when it comes to art materials, everybody's going to have their favorite materials that they like to use, and some people are going to use materials that other people hate, and vice versa.
They have a very distinct look. So if you really appreciate the look, that super soft look of the pan pastels, I guess in a way it could save you a step, in sort of blurring or smoothing them out. But David did ask, what is pan pastels? And pan pastels, you can think of them almost like using pastels in a set that is modeled after a watercolor set. They're in pans, circular or oval discs, and you apply them with a it's not a brush, but it's almost like a makeup applicator.
Yeah, it's kind of like a makeup applicator. And the company that makes pan pastel makes those applicators. I think they're called Soft or something with an extra F in them or something. But I've had some for a while, and they have dry rotted. Yeah. And if you're my paintbrushes don't dry rot ever. So it was just a little disappointing that you'd have to order more of those applicators, and all the products are kind of expensive. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
It's fantastic.
But yeah, I think they're great for backgrounds. Yeah.
Especially that photographic look.
Yeah, but you can't really get a lot of details with them. So you kind of have to use them in conjunction with, you don't have to, but when I use them, I'm using them in conjunction with colored pencils or more pastels. All right, let's move on to the next piece, which is the fork and the spoon.
The fork and spoon. So that one was mine, and this is charcoal and white charcoal on a gray ground, a gray piece of paper. And so I would say that the key for to pull this drawing off was the shape of the shape of the actual fork and spoon, and then also line. There's a lot of areas of gray in here and some soft transitions in around the edges of some of the reflective dark shapes, but there is a lot of line work, just really sharp black or white lines along the edges of the forks, tines, and around the rim of the spoon as well. So consistency of line was important here in this drawing, and just kind of keeping and paying attention to the tip of the white charcoal pencil, and just kind of making sure that it matched the size of the reflection I need. So they do communicate, those lines come across as reflective lights and darks, but it was really quite a lot of line work. And then, of course, there's just some little shapes, little dark shapes inside of both of these utensils that had to, either be very blurry on the edges or just a little softened on the edge. So all in all, this drawing wasn't very hard to do. And I think the results, I got a lot of bang for my buck out of this one. I really like how the drawing came out. I love to draw shiny things anyway. And I did struggle with the composition. I took this photograph, or the photograph I used, I took myself, and I think I took about 30 pictures, probably at least, of the fork and the spoon. And, I had a lot of dynamic diagonals and crossovers and perspective. And then when I finally settled down a little bit, I was in a photo frenzy, and took a simpler picture of the two just next to each other this way. It seemed to work a lot better. So I think the composition's pretty cool. And I kept this one actually out on my mantle to look at for a few weeks after we finished it. Drawings that I typically really like, I like to prop them up and just look at them for a little bit before they go into the folder, never to see the light of day again. And what I would do differently, and this really came down to time, because even though this wasn't too hard of a drawing, it definitely took the whole 45 minutes, because I had to work sort of methodically around those edges and make sure that I was happy with the shapes of the two utensils before we got into the charcoal, especially the white charcoal. It's called white charcoal, but it doesn't erase as easily as regular charcoal. So I didn't want to be moving anything around. So I felt like if I had a little bit more time, I would have liked to have worked in the background more And I started to do some shading at the very bottom left corner with some of the time that was left. And looking at it now, I think I would have rather either not done that shading at all or done a little bit more across the background surface and create a longer transition from the bottom left corner up to the top right corner. So either more background shading or less, one of the two. That's what I would do differently.
All right. That's interesting because when I was looking at this, I thought that little dark area down there was just the way I photographed it. But I forgot that you added a little bit of...
I started to. And then
a little bit of charcoal down there.
I'm just going to leave it like it is.
Yeah, this is fantastic drawing, especially for just 45 minutes. And there's several things to point out with this piece. First of all, composition, as Ashley pointed out, sometimes simple is better. And this may seem like an obvious... it's one of those things where it wasn't probably obvious to you initially, but then when you simplified it, you're like, oh, this is obvious. This is obviously a good composition.
What I should have done in the first place, because the way they kind of fit along into one another.
Right. You know? So when you see it when you see something like that and it feels, oh, this is obvious, then a lot of times that's a good decision. So a great decision on the composition. The diagonals are what is making this more interesting. You can imagine if the fork and spoon were side by side, just going vertically, it would still be an interesting composition, but it's much more interesting with the diagonals. When you can incorporate diagonals into your compositions, you're automatically going to start with a stronger composition. And not just laying out subjects diagonally, but encouraging some diagonal eye movement. So when the viewer interacts with the piece, having their eye move through diagonals through the piece. And they can be accomplished with textures, lines, value contrast, lots of different ways to create that. But very good composition, good balance between positive and negative space. This piece is actually made up mostly negative space. So negative space are all the areas around here, and the positive space, of course, are the fork and the spoon. And, when we were dealing with composition, we want to have balance between positive and negative space. And there's no rules meaning that you have equal amounts positive or negative space. You can have a composition that's nearly all positive space or nearly all negative space, and it can be successful depending on the subject matter and the amount of detail and visual weight that each one of the elements has. But in this piece, it's mostly negative space. And this piece is a real testament to how powerful working on a middle value paper is. So when we start with a middle value with this gray paper, we start in the middle of the value scale, and this allows us to push values both lighter and darker from that middle starting point. When we start on white paper, we start on one end of the value scale. So we're on the extreme end, and then as we add media, we work our way towards the middle and darker values. Starting at a gray allows us to start in the middle and push outward. So automatically, we have the ability to have a full range of value very quickly and easily when we work on a middle-toned or a mid-toned paper. Another good thing to point out here with this piece is you worked with black and white, and then you were able to use the gray of the paper to act as grays on the subject itself.
The tines of the fork are really just a white line and a black line.
Right.
And the middle is almost completely the paper's natural value.
Right. So you were using the actual tone of the paper to fill in color or value on the subject itself. Now, a lot of people look at an image like this and think, man, this is difficult. I'll never be able to do that. But, this is a great drawing, but I don't want people to be afraid of shiny surfaces or metallic surfaces because of the nature of the shiny surface, it makes it easier to create a realistic image. And it all boils down to value, contrast, and shape.
And the difference between the reflective areas is so great, you almost can't mess it up. They're distinctly shiny or light or distinctly dark. And I like that. And in that way, you do have to just train yourself to flatten out those shapes. And then just treat them like shapes.
Right. So you're looking for, when you're trying to create a highly reflective surface, when you're trying to create the illusion of a highly reflective surface, you're looking for shapes of light and dark And also one of the things that you see a lot on highly reflective surfaces is high contrast between those shapes. So instead of a slow gradation of tone and value, you often see a light value right next to a dark value.
Very quick.
If you look at this shape right here, this is just a simple shape. It's a lighter value, but look what's right next to it, a super dark value and another very dark value. And then embedded within that is a shape of lighter value. Then right here is another shape of lighter value. And these are just shapes of value. And they're just positioned in a way that creates that illusion. Same thing on the handle and the fork. We've got a light value, a much darker value, and then a much darker value than that. Dark value, mid value, light value. And they're all right next to each other without a lot of gradation. Now, there's still going to be some areas where we do have gradation, but a lot of times that those gradations of tone and value are due to reflections or curvature or plane changes on the subject. So, just a really good piece here to show how you can accomplish the illusion of a highly reflective surface using charcoal, white and black charcoal. So excellent job. Really great drawing.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the next one. And I think this was the next one that I did.
So.
We're guessing here. We could have researched. Right. This was my urban sketch, and then I got, of course, it's YouTube, so I'm always going to get railed for something. I got railed for this not being an urban sketch because there's no buildings in it.
There's no buildings and dump trucks.
Where urban sketching, guys, I hate to tell you, it's plain air painting or drawing in a city environment. That's it. So doesn't have to have buildings in it to be categorized as urban sketching, but these people are in the city in a park bench. And one of the things that has kind of tied itself to urban sketching, kind of like Kleenex has to tissues, is the combination of pen and ink and watercolor. Line and wash has, it's a medium combination that's gone back for a long time. But nowadays, a lot of times when people hear urban sketch or urban sketching, they think watercolor and pen and ink. So I decided to go with that media combination. And I've been gradually adding some painting components to Getting Sketchy. Some that I've been happy with and some that I haven't been happy with. But watercolor is probably the best medium to work with in a short time period, like we work with in the Getting Sketchy time frame of 45 minutes. So in this piece, I needed to focus on the line work with the pen and ink, but I needed to keep the line work fairly simple. So you'll notice in this drawing that the lines basically just define the contours. The line really doesn't do a whole lot of work in regards to shading. There are some areas where the line is a little bit thicker than other areas, but that is not necessarily purposeful. But you can make the line a little bit thicker in areas to create a little bit of an illusion of shadow, or make a subject feel a little bit heavier by adding a thicker line here and there. You should always vary your line quality or thickness or thinness of line. Then, of course, the watercolor applications were to add a bit of color. In this piece, the things I like about this piece, first of all, I just like the composition. I like the fact that these people they're off to the side, they're off to the left, but yet we have this visual element over here on the right. There's a lot of white on there too, but on the right to help balance that out. And when you're thinking about visual components within a composition, the way I like to think about it is in terms of a teeter-totter or a seesaw. I call it a seesaw. When you have a seesaw and you have some visual elements on one side, they're going to have a certain amount of visual weight. So you will need to balance that visual weight out with something on the other side. So that can be something really heavy, or it can be lots of little things that equal the visual weight to help things keep balanced or feel balanced. So these lines over here with a strong contrast without having any color help to balance out the visual weight of these guys over here. Plus, the addition of this little bit of darker value over here as well helps to counterbalance that and keep things visually balanced.
It's balanced, and those elements bring us back to the people.
Yes, that's true. Time. They do act as guiding lines to pull us over here. it's not a complete image, but an image that doesn't have color everywhere or line work everywhere or value everywhere. It can feel finished. So this kind of feels finished, even though everything is not filled in. Some of the things that I really like about this piece, other than those things, are the colors of the skin tones. So these two people have different skin tones. The lady was a little bit pinker, the man was a little bit tanner. So I really wanted to capture that in the quick painting. I think I did a good job with that. So I really like the lady's legs there. That sounds bad, but I really like the colors in her legs, and I like the layering of the colors on the faces as well, both of them, and a bit of shadow underneath the umbrella as well. Some things that I would have done a little bit differently. I feel like I could have varied the blue a little bit more. All of the blues in here feel very similar. I could have used some different pigments for, the different blues and different sections. I was a little heavy with the Payne's Gray in areas, but I love Payne's Gray. The Payne's Gray is this color right here. I used a lot of Payne's Gray in some of the shadowed areas. Payne's Gray is an excellent color to use when you need to make a shadow or you need to make a color darker without using black. So I would recommend everybody have Payne's Gray in their artist toolkit, no matter what paint medium you're using.
I really like how you handled the shadow under the bench and coming off of the people's legs. It looks really loose and confident, and it wasn't drawn like the rest of it was drawn, so it doesn't have the little black outline around it, which makes it feel less there, like a shadow. Probably should be less solid, and so I think that was a good call. And I would mention that Steve said that this looks like Matt and Ashley in 20 years, LOL, humorously. And I think that's really funny, Steve, because I do wear socks with sandals, and Matt does carry a pocketbook. He calls his a Merce.
I don't carry a pocketbook. What are you talking about?
I'm just kidding. I'm just adding to Steve's comment.
All right.
So, very funny. Very funny.
I do not carry a pocketbook. I'm also not a woman. I'm very sure of that. Nothing against women.
And I don't wear leather sandals with socks. I wear slides with socks. So that's a little bit, little more fashionable, I hope. Very funny. I'm glad that you're tackling watercolor and more paint media, because a lot of folks have been asking for that.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm doing it.
I don't know. I'm inspired. Maybe I'll try. Maybe I'll try a little watercolor next season if I can muster up the courage.
Enrique said, "I was sure there were two men." DJ thought there were two guys too. Sorry, I didn't think it was a woman. Yeah. Did you watch the episode that we did this? This was definitely a woman. Yeah, she just has short hair.
We talked for a while about what she might have in her pocketbook.
Right. There was a lot of discussion about that.
I think Matt's kneaded eraser was hiding in her pocketbook at the time. Right. If I remember.
We found my kneaded eraser. Remember, it was just covered in pencil shavings.
That's right.
It was camouflaged.
It was in the shaving box, the pencil shaving box.
Yeah.
Glad you got it back.
Yeah. I like this one. I really enjoyed making this one, and I like it. The hand's a little wonky on the guy, but hey, he's got to hold the umbrella right.
Again, you used a lot of orange and blue together. So
yeah, no coincidence.
See, Matt is totally attracted to that complementary relationship. Let's see if it happens again.
Yeah. Let's see if it does. All right, moving on to Ashley's next piece, which is the fish.
All right. So this was my beautiful fish. And I had done the sharpener and the fork and spoon at this point. So I thought, I'm going to get organic. I'm going to do something from nature. And I'll pick something easy. I'll pick a fish. And I think this was the hardest drawing for me all season. I mean, I thought fish shape, bird shape. I'll do the fish. But they're both sort of easy blobby shapes. And this wasn't easy at all. I think it was because the face is so prominent and there was a lot of value changes in the face. Also, the body is foreshortened. So the fish is actually, we know fish typically, unless it's like an angelfish, are longer than they are tall. But if you don't look at the fins, the shape of this fish's body is almost a circle. I mean, it's very circular. It's not really much wider than it is tall. So I found that to be a little bit challenging. and it had some transparency in there in the fins. At this point in the season, I had not used color yet. And so I thought I'll do a black and white fish. And that way I can slowly step into the world of color, continue my slow progression towards color here in this 15th season. And so there's color everywhere. There's blue on the top of the fish, and I think green in the bottom of the fish. And then, of course, I was using some grays all along the way, mixing into those. But I would say I like the results, but I felt a little uncomfortable during the drawing process, just because it was so organic, and that's not typically what I like to draw. So if I were to do something different, I'm not sure. I mean, the background it kind of works. Those two light marks above the fish that are sort of angled down towards the fish, they work okay, but I don't know. I've got a color in the background. I used a limited palette. Maybe it was too limited. There's a color in the background that's also in the fish. It's sort of that yellow, green, or chartreuse-like color. And I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have used that color and stuck with something that was cooler or more subdued, like a blue-green. Substitute sort of a lighter blue-green instead of that hot color, just so that those small portions of that color that are in the fish project a little bit more.
And you did this on blue paper too.
That's right. It's on blue paper.
So, another example of piece started on a middle tone value. But when you work on a cool colored paper or warm colored paper, sometimes that can create a little bit of conflict when you add warmer colors on a cool surface and vice versa. And it can make things a little bit difficult to work through. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but maybe that's the reason why some of those yellow greens aren't
receding.
They're not as yellow green as you would expect them to be. But I do like the color combination. I mean, you've got yellow green, you've got blue purple in there. So it's almost a split complementary color scheme. But I will say this. I remember the photo reference, and man, the photo reference was almost monochromatic. Was it not?
Yeah, it was. It was very close. It was very dull.
Meaning it was basically one color and just different values of that color. And when I saw the photo reference, I was curious to see how Ashley was going to render his fish. And I think that the fish is very well rendered. I like the color combinations, the way you've pushed some of the colors. You added purple in areas.
I liked doing that. I'll tell you what I did, Matt. I point sampled using a Photoshop-like program parts of the fish to see which direction the colors leaned, because it was so gray.
Yeah.
And then I just I noted noted if it was a sort of a gray that the program was deciding had to start with green or had to start with blue, and then I just kind of pushed that. So I did use a digital program to help me make some color decisions, and then just pushed it a little with the pastels.
Well, I like the colors. I like I really like this one. I like the fact that the fish is positioned a little lower on the picture plane, not necessarily in the center.
He's a deep water fish.
And I like the mark making there with the pastels.
And I like the results. I think it came out well. It was just it wasn't comfortable to draw.
Well, sometimes
it puts me outside of my comfort zone, I guess. What I mean
and you probably were outside of your comfort zone, and if you're like me, you were probably disappointed with the result in the moment.
That's right.
But when you come back and look at it, you see the merits of what you did. Is that kind of how you're feeling?
Yeah, that's exactly how it was my impression.
We got to hustle a little bit.
All right,
so let's move on to the next one.
It's happened again.
The next one was mine, and I decided to work with white charcoal on black paper. So we did a variety of different application techniques with lots of different mediums here. But so this is black paper on white paper, or white material, white charcoal on black paper. And like Ashley said earlier, white charcoal really isn't charcoal, but it's called white charcoal. It behaves like white charcoal. The thing is, when you work on a black surface, just like I mentioned earlier about starting with a white surface, you start on one end of the value scale. You have to push the values the other way. The great thing about black paper, however, is most of the environments that we're in where we view subjects are mostly dark. We have mostly shadows instead of areas of light. So when you work on black paper and you add the white material, you can work up to a full range of value much quicker than if you start on a white surface and then add dark materials.
The black areas don't feel empty. They just feel shadow.
Right. They feel like shadow, where a white paper just feels unfinished. So I enjoyed creating this. I enjoy working with white material on black paper. It does require you to be a little bit more deliberate and a little bit more cautious with your applications. And in 45 minutes, it's a little bit difficult to be super cautious. But I thought the subject would be good for this combination of media. The thing that I really like about white charcoal and charcoal in general is that you can create such a variety of different texture just by smudging the material and leaving some areas unsmudged. For example, this area right here that's in shadow, you can still see hints of the texture of the fur, but it is muted, one, because it's in shadow, but also because I smudged it a little bit with a blending tool or my finger, I can't remember which. And these transition areas are also easy to accomplish because you can just smudge the material and create a soft transition. But you can also create deliberate marks on the surface to create a little bit more texture. So the cat's obviously furry, so that requires deliberate marks and directional strokes that will help create that illusion. I like this one. There's some proportional issues with this. I feel like I made the cat's head a little too long this way. To fix that, I would have needed to bring this back edge in just a little bit tighter. So you can kind of imagine how that would make things feel a little bit more natural, but in its current state, it's a little bit elongated. I also got a little close to the edge of the picture plane up here. That can cause some issues with visual weight. Whenever you put an element that ends really close to the edge of the picture plane, it pulls our eye to that location. Sometimes that can be very useful. In this case, it's actually working for the piece because the white area down here barely goes off the bottom. So whenever you have something that is very close to the edge or just barely goes off the edge, that is going to pull your viewer's eye to those locations. And in this case, it's just kind of working because of the pull at the bottom and the pull at the top balancing each other out. So something to think about with your own compositions. Just be wary of the edges. Ashley, got anything else for this one?
I just really love the way the ear, the forward ear, the one that's closer to us, is rendered. You know, that's a tough shape because it's actually coming out towards us a little bit. And it works really well. You've got some really nice mark making in there, little separate marks that don't even touch each other, but we can totally understand the information that's in there. So I think that was a challenging area, handled well.
All right, we've got to move on because
we got to keep going.
We've, it's 7:20 now,
or three
and
more?
The next one's Ashley's. We've got 4 more.
Okay,
so we're gonna have to go a little quicker.
Speed
here.
up a little bit. So,
and the reason why we're having to hurry is because we have another broadcast right after this for the members.
Yeah, and some of you will be there, so
Yes.
I want to make sure you guys have a chance to get your materials out and get ready.
Right.
To follow along with Matt's instruction tonight, starting a new drawing. All right, but let's talk about this one. So this was my lunch from about a month ago or so, or at least a piece of it. It's my apple core. And for this one, I finally jumped completely into color. So it took me 4 drawings to get there, but had a pretty broad palette. We've got a lot of red, yellow, and blue in here. So there's a lot of primary colors. Of course, there's other colors too, a little bit of purple and a shadow, and there's green in the apple as well. But what makes, I think, the key to this one was the value, really strong value due to the side lighting on the apple core as to what was in the light or in the shadow. And then the layering of colors, the mixture of colors through layering, especially on the top of the apple to give it that kind of, it does have a waxy surface, and colored pencil seemed like a good medium for that since it's made of wax. And it feels that way to me, like the shiny spot and the way the light sort of dissolves softly into a pink and then back into the red. I think I think I did a pretty good job capturing the feeling of the smoothness of the outside of the apple versus the roughness of the bitten parts of the apple. So I was pretty happy with how this one went, especially since it was full-blown color and color pencil, which can be a little bit, I find it to be a little challenging sometimes with limited time because of the requirement of all those layers.
Yeah, when you use colored pencils properly, it is a very time-intensive medium, and you have to work very slowly in order to use them to their full potential. I see a lot of people grab colored pencils and think, hey, they're pencils, I'll use them like graphite. And they just, apply the material very lightly in areas and let the white of the paper show through, just like you would with graphite. And that's not really the best way to use colored pencils. Colored pencils are at their best when they're layered
And they're built up.
and like pastels. And you really have to put a lot of layers in order to build up the depth and color. And with pencils like Prismacolor pencils, which I think is what you use, you have to build up that waxy surface because the medium itself actually changes a little bit on the surface and gives you the ability to create these waxy areas like this that have those smooth transitions and depth and color. So it is time intensive. So I think this is pretty impressive that Ashley is able to pull this off in 45 minutes. But the drawing is very small. It looks big on your screen right now, but the drawing itself is what? It's only a few inches by a few inches, right?
Yeah, it was probably maybe 3.5 by 2.5, something. It was small.
By 2.5.
Maybe it was bigger than that, but it wasn't very big at all.
Very small drawing.
Yeah. I mean, the mark making, it's pretty gross looking. Gross is in large. Looks like I was using like colored pencil sticks probably on your screen if you're viewing this on a computer screen because you're viewing it a lot larger than the original drawing.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can do when we look at a drawing up close like this is really appreciate areas like this where Ashley's layered some green in those areas. And, this is another example of a complementary color scheme, minus the blue background. But the reds and the greens, red and green are complementary. So having some green and some cooler greens and some warmer greens, even in the shadowed area, is really contrasting the reds up there. I really like the way the colors are bouncing off of each other. And another thing I'll point out is, a lot of times beginning artists get obsessed with outlines and they want to add outlines everywhere. Because that's really the way that we learn to draw, is we learn to draw outlines. And outlines are important with colored pencils, but they need to be placed in the correct location and they need to be placed in a way that they don't overwhelm the subject. Yeah. So Ashley's used outlining in areas, and I'm going to point out those areas, like right here, this outline right here that is really strong, does a great job defining the edge, but then becomes softer right here in the shadow. Another stronger outline right here, but it's softer right here. Another stronger outline right here, but then it almost dissipates into the background. So those edges that Ashley created in here are extremely important for making the apple stand out against the background, but don't bring it to a level where it feels cartoony. It still feels...
Those were the last marks that went in, and I learned that from you. When using colored pencils.
Right. The 5 do's for better hues.
Yeah, outline last.
Yeah. When you're working with colored pencils, I have these cheesy sayings and stuff that I use when I'm teaching in my courses and stuff. And in the 5 do's for better hues, one of those is outline last. When you're working with colored pencils, the tendency is you want to outline at the beginning. But like I said, outlines are important, but save them for the end and then really evaluate where you need a strong edge. All right, moving on to the next one then. And here again, I decided to use a crazy combination of media here. I hope I can remember all that I used here. I used watercolor pencils because people ask for it. And that's it, right?
No gouache in here?
No, I had planned on using gouache.
That's what it was.
But then I decided to just leave these
That's
open.
Right, you didn't need
okay,
to.
so I think this whole thing is watercolor pencils, if I remember correctly. So not a crazy amount of mediums, but in my mind, when I was putting this together, I thought I was going to use a bunch of different mediums. So mushroom, I don't really draw. Well, I guess I've got a couple mushrooms that I've done in the past, but this is a very straightforward Yeah, far out groovy, man. This is a pretty straightforward subject matter. It is almost symmetrically balanced, so that is also atypical of what I usually do. But I'm talking about the composition here. But I really love watercolor pencils. I don't use them as frequently as I probably should.
Were they Inktense pencils?
No, they're watercolor pencils.
Buddy thought that you may have used the Inktense pencils.
No, and Inktense pencils differ from watercolor pencils because, according to the manufacturer, Inktense pencils are actually ink. So when they dry, they're permanent. Watercolor pencils, however, when they dry, they can still be reworked to a certain degree, just like watercolor. So, and there's a limit to that. That doesn't mean you go in and lift up all the watercolor. But if you tried to lift up Inktense pencils applications, then you would have a lot of difficulty. Inktense pencils are more intense, as the name implies, but they're also more permanent. I do have Inktense pencils, but I really rarely use them. I do like the watercolor pencils, though. But I was really strapped for time for this one, which was surprising. And it was because I thought it was going to be pretty quick and easy because of the subject matter. But this subject matter is a little bit more complicated due to the, what are those things called again? Do you remember what?
The type of mushroom? Oh, no, those little, are they scales? No.
No, somebody told us what they were.
That's right, because they kind of separate or break apart.
Well, they just go right through our head here. One in one ear, out the other. There's a name for those things up there. But that slowed me down a little bit. Also, the grassy area in front, which is moss, it's not grassy, but
this is a triadic color scheme, I think, Matt.
Yeah, it is.
Red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, violet.
Yeah,
I think he ended up with a triad.
So we've got. Let's see. The colors you picked out were red, orange.
Yeah. Blue, green. I'm sorry, blue, violet.
Blue, purple, or blue, violet, and
yellow, green.
And yellow, green. So let's look at how those line up on the color wheel. We got red, yellow, and blue. We've got green, orange, and purple. Then we've got red, purple, blue, purple, yellow, orange, red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, green. And so we've got red, orange, blue, purple, and yellow, green.
Yep.
And that is...
You used a tertiary triad. Pretty rare.
Pretty rare and also not purposeful.
The unicorn of color scheme.
Right. So that is a color triad. So we had talked about color schemes a little bit earlier tonight as we're looking at things. Color triads are another color scheme option. They are colors that are equidistant from each other on the color wheel, and it's usually made up of 3 colors. So a color triad is always made up of 3 colors. In this piece, I really enjoy just using the watercolor pencils. Every time I use watercolor pencils, I want to use them more. In this piece, I do believe I worked on hot press watercolor paper. So it has a little bit of a different texture. Some of the brush strokes are a little bit more evident when you work on hot press watercolor paper. Although when you're working with watercolor pencils, it's not going to be as evident because you're applying the material first and then you're, what's the word I'm looking for? You activate it with water. So it becomes like watercolor when you activate it on the surface. Some of the things that I would do different with this, I would add a little bit more of a stronger indication of the shadow on this side of the mushroom because the light source is coming from this direction and the shadow here is really nice, but it's a little bit lacking up here on the top. And, when I'm thinking about the reference in my mind right now, it really wasn't very strong in the reference either. But now looking at it with some time, it feels like that side of the mushroom needs to have a little bit more shadow, and that would make this feel even more 3-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And the shadow is missing down here too underneath. And again, in the reference, it wasn't there. It wasn't evident because this moss had all its own little shadows in there. And I did this bottom part pretty quickly at the end of the broadcast. But, if I was to go back in and rework this, I would make this darker and I would add an indication of some cast shadow behind it. And that would make things a lot stronger. All right, Ashley, have anything to add?
No, I think that's a really good assessment. And even if you don't see, you mentioned that wasn't really there, those shadows in the reference, doesn't mean that you can't make those decisions and change, your drawing from the reference to make it stronger. So I think that's a good assessment. I think that'll be helpful for folks.
Okay, Jan says ink tints only becomes permanent if it is first completely dissolved in water once. If some of it is unresolved, it'll be reactivated. Well, yeah, that's true, but that's how you apply it to the surface, right? You put it on there and then you activate it with water. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Yep,
which was Ashley's watch.
7:31. So this will be a fast one.
Yeah, we
a 1 minute critique.
Go quick, because then we got to pick our favorites.
Very quickly. I think the key for this one is getting a decent ellipse for the face of the watch and transitions in the watch band. And so I took my time in the drawing step with the initial ellipse for the watch, and I used a blending marker to help with the transitions in the band, especially in that the back side of the band at the top of the drawing. That's right. So I'm getting more comfortable with marker. It's not a medium I used when I was learning to draw. It's not a medium I used when I was in drawing school, and it became a little more popular in my own classroom in just actually the last few years, maybe the last 6 or 7, the last few years. And so getting more comfortable using them. I've used them in a couple of seasons now, and I think I'm going to keep going with that. Initially, this drawing was supposed to be marker and ink, and the marker really took over. The ink that's in there plays a secondary role, but I do think that one of the two needed to be the dominant medium. And since I was doing some shading with the markers, that I chose to just use a little bit of hatching near the end, just to sort of bring some continuity to the whole piece. Some small hatching marks on both the face of the watch and the leather band. And I think I like the leather band the best. I really love the way the leather band looks, where it comes together and has that, that little collar that keeps the band together under the buckle. So this is my final drawing of the season. And I would point out that my last 2 drawings were Apple Watch. Not intentional.
True. Apple Watch.
Apple Watch.
Yep. Mine were mushroom candle, which doesn't make sense.
I'm going to try to string all the names of my drawings together next season to make a sentence. No, not really.
I like the simplicity of this one, and I think you touched on some good points there, so I won't rehash them. I like the simplicity of the line work that you used in here, how it doesn't overwhelm the marker applications. I do feel like maybe a little bit of an indication of just a hint of the line on the bands.
On the band.
Just a little bit, maybe a broken line back here and broken line right there.
That would be nice, just to sharpen it up a little bit.
Yeah, just to, because markers, even on marker paper, they still kind of bleed out a little bit.
A little soft.
And I want to just point out for everybody that one of my favorite things about this piece is the mistake Ashley made. Because it makes the piece feel more interesting and more realistic. Yeah. And the mistake is where he added a color that he didn't intend to right there on that part of the band. And that area makes the watch band feel more natural and more realistic.
Variety, yes. So it's realistic.
So the color you were trying to choose is this one, right?
Yeah, the brown color, and I put an orange down.
Right. So if he would have continued that out, it would be missing that piece of orange right there, which is so important. Do you see it? And it ties in, although these oranges are very muted, it ties in with the oranges right here. So
lucky break there.
When you do something like that, don't give up on your piece, because it could be something that improves it unintentionally. And I think that's a great example of that.
Happy mistake.
All right. Last one for me was the candle painting. And this is gouache.
This one was good.
On black paper, black watercolor paper. And man, what a challenge that was. I don't think we've ever used gouache you used it on the B a couple seasons ago.
Yeah.
But it was minimal.
Very minimal. It was dominated by another media.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, gouache is opaque watercolor paper, or opaque watercolor. It's not paper. And gouache is like colored pencils in that you need to work slowly. And the painting I created here was probably too large for the time frame. And you have to be really patient when you're working on black paper, especially with gouache, because it really, once you put down an application, the gouache usually dries with a little bit of transparency. So you have to be patient and put another application down once it's dry and continue to do that to work the colors. So this was an incredible time crunch for me. Plus, I was feeling, and this isn't an excuse, but I was feeling really bad. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I was feeling bad.
Yeah.
And
We talked about it.
I talked about it during the live show that followed, but not during the Gettin Sketchy episode. And come to find out, I had another kidney stone, which I passed last Sunday. So a 3mm one too. So if you had kidney stones before, you kind of have an idea of what a 3mm stone felt like. But I was hurting that night, and I'm sure it was because of the point I was trying to make by choosing this subject, and that was that there's a lot of darkness in the world. We should be the light of the world. We should be the goodness in the world. Okay, we need to bring light to the darkness, and this was my choice before Christmas to bring home that message. Some of you understood that and got that message, but it was a great challenge. Plus, I was feeling not so great, but I really like a lot of aspects about this piece. I love the blue and the orange. I'm so glad I decided to find.
There it is again. It was coming.
I'm so glad I searched for a reference image that had the blue fire in it, because that makes such a difference. I really like the wick and how the wick feels very natural.
It does. The white that you added at the end made all the difference.
It did make a huge difference. The things I don't like about it are the areas that fade into the blackness. And that is a challenge with the gouache on the black paper. And those areas are down here at the bottom of the candle. It's hard to see that. But as this, the reference photo fades out to the darkness, because the light is only getting down to that part of the candle. And there is a glow around the edge of the flame as well. And since gouache is a little bit more granular than watercolor, you see the texture that's created there. So the best way to accomplish that would have been for me to mix the color instead of relying on the black of the paper to show through. So if I were to do this again, I would mix this color and apply it to the black paper, but mix a darker version so that you still had that illusion of there being a little bit of a glow around the flame, but without the granularity that happens there just because of the nature of the material and the surface. And obviously, I'd like to smooth out these transitions, which would be fairly easy to do once you have enough gouache on the surface to do so. But if you watch that episode, I kept going back to that area, adding more and more and more, and it just never was enough. So I would have needed to spend more time doing that. Obviously, I didn't have the time to do that. But I really, looking at this after the fact, I really like this piece. I really like this painting in person. I really like the way it looks in person. It is a challenge. So if you do decide to do this one, it's going to be more challenging than most of the Getting Sketchy episodes that you may work alongside of. So don't get frustrated. Just understand that the nature of the material is challenging and you need to work slowly and take your time. Some of you may prefer to not work on black paper for this if you decide to do that. But I've done at least one other gouache painting on black paper, and I loved it. And I loved the process for it. You just have to be really patient, and you have to really layer your colors in order to do so. Ironically, I talked about the mushroom having a symmetrically balanced or approximately symmetrical balanced composition and how I don't do that very much. And then I do the candle for the next one, which is also very much approximately symmetry. It's an approximately symmetrical composition. So what that means, for those of you who don't know, is if we were to draw a line right down the middle of this, the shapes on this side are very similar to the shapes on this side. So it's not quite symmetry, but it's approximate symmetry. Same thing's true for the mushroom. All right, Ashley, it is time. Did you want to say anything else about this one?
Just about your color choices. You know, using the yellow orange below the flame and then the red orange does make it's interesting because this is a opaque watercolor, but I think you did a good job with the waxy feel of the candle and the light of the flame passing down into that candle with those colors. It feels translucent. So nice job with your color choices there. And again, I'd already mentioned the white, that white marks you put in the wick and along the top edge that contributes to the waxy feel. And of course, our extremely surreal audience has pointed out the dancing man in the wick.
Of course.
They've seen a man in the wick.
I don't see a man. I see a woman in the wick. I'm just kidding.
I see John Wick. No, not really.
All right. So now it is time. I see you guys
We've
are
got some
already
votes already. Yeah.
putting in your votes. Let's see. I'm just going to start at the top. Lisa says, well, no, that's not a vote here. Jan says, my vote, Ashley Fork and Spoon. Watch runner up.
All right. Very
and then
good.
Jan says, Matt Bird, Candle runner up. Bear in the Garden says, my vote tie between Ashley's watch and Matt's candle. Love them both. I'm surprised the candle's getting votes. Says, mine at watch and candle. Close second is fish and bird. My choices are the urban sketch, the candle, the fish, and the watch. Ashley, Fork and Spoon, Matt the cat. Keith, my vote, Ashley, apple core, Matt Bird. Jen, fish. Ashley's fork, spoon piece, and Matt's urban painting piece were my favorites this season. All the works of art were great. All right.
Very good.
Ashley, you want to pick your favorite first?
Yeah, I think my favorite for me was, I'm going to go with a fork and spoon. I think that was my favorite.
Fork
drawing
and spoon.
for myself,
for Ashley's favorite
this season. And I think, for Matt, my favorite drawing of Matt, I'm going to say, I think it's the urban sketch.
Urban sketch.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the softness of
those
the
are
bird
right next to each other.
and the mark making of the bird. But I think I'm going to go with the urban sketch. I just love the way the lines work in there and the asymmetrical balance.
All right, very good. For me, I'm going to try. You know what I'm thinking, right?
What's that?
Then you don't know what I'm thinking.
No, I don't.
I'm trying to make this more interesting.
You've got the same drawings picked out? That's what I thought you were thinking. That you had the same drawings picked out.
Yep. My favorites for Ashley are the fork and spoon, and for me, the urban sketch.
It's unanimous.
Yeah, it's a unanimous. For us, we're on the same page. Mm-hmm. But I will say, honorable mention for me, which I haven't seen anybody vote for this, but it's the apple for Ashley.
Oh, somebody voted for the apple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I came up once. Thank you for your apple vote, by
Yeah.
the way.
And runner up for me would be, I guess the bird. The bird, yeah, would be runner up for me. But I'm comfortable with pastels, so it kind of feels like cheating a little bit. But the one I struggled with the most was, and I'm sure you figured that out, was the candle painting because of the combination of the material and because I had a kidney stone that was really hurting me at the time. What about you, Ashley? Which was your most challenging one?
I think it was the fish, actually.
The fish, that's right. You kind of alluded that as well.
I think that I was the least comfortable during the process of drawing the fish. So I had to be real careful with that ugly mug. Make sure it was ugly enough.
Yeah.
It is.
You got to get used to handling. Got to get used to the mugs. I don't know what I was going to say there, but I had a funny joke, but I could not remember.
I'm used to handling ugly mugs, man. I got one to handle every morning. So,
that's kind of what I was going to say there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for season 15. So we will take a few weeks off, probably a month. And then we'll be back with season 16 of Gettin Sketchy.
Sweet 16. More candles.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to do candles again next season, but we'll see. But I will continue to try to incorporate some watercolor at the very least into our lessons here, because I know it's what you guys want to see, and it's whatever you guys want to see is what we want to bring to you. So
that's right.
Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you like it. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below if you're watching the recorded version of this. Let us know which ones were your favorite, and if you did the drawings. And if you missed any of these episodes, all of these drawings are created in a single episode, and there's a ton. So we just finished season 15. Now, the first first several seasons I did by myself, they weren't 10 episodes long. They were, maybe I did 3 or 4 drawings or whatever.
And they were 30 minutes, right?
They were 30 minutes. The first few episodes were 30 minutes. Anyway, those still exist out there on the internet. You can also find all of the previous Gettin Sketchy episodes at thevirtualinstructor.com. And, that's a lot of sketches that you guys can create and practice with. And every season since we started doing it, since we started doing the 10 episode long seasons, ends in a critique show like this. And a lot of people, like I said, avoid the critique show because they don't think it's interesting, but it's very, very important. You can learn a lot from it. So I hope you learned a lot from this episode. You got anything else for the folks?
Lisa says her favorite season so far was In the Style Of. And
that's a good season. Yeah.
That was fun. It was really hard.
It was hard
to draw in the style of other artists, but that was a really good one. So thank you for your comments. It's been great to be with you all over the last 12 weeks or so. We did have a week off somewhere in there. And we're just going to keep this party going for a lot of us, Matt and I, and many of you out there in the live lesson coming up in about 14 minutes. So if we don't see you there,
14 minutes.
We'll see you in a month or so.
Wow.
And I hope things are going well for you in the new year.
All right. Happy New Year, everybody. We out. We'll see you soon, hopefully. Good night, everybody.